welcome back to my channel. We are approaching the end of 2021. I don't really know how I feel about that, but I have been keeping track of all the books I've read, all the TV shows I watched, and all the movies I watched this year. So this is my 2021 books video, and then next week will be TV shows, I think. And then the week after will be movies, so if you are interested in those lists, please stick around for those uploads. I really wanted to read a lot more books than I did this year, but it was a really transformational, transitional, pivotal year for me, and there were so many changes in my life that I just didn't really have the emotional or mental capacity to sit down and listen to a book or read a book all the time. But I did read 6 books this year, and honestly 6 is better than 0. What sucks is that as of like a month ago, I really started to fall back in love with reading. Like, I would actually be excited to pick up my book at the end of the day, or throughout the day I would be thinking about the book that I'm in while I'm doing other things. So hopefully we should have a lot more books for 2022 when I do this again next year. But anyway, this video is going to be accompanied by a Medium article that I've written that will be linked in the description of this video. I will say that I'm in the middle of 2 other books right now that I have not had the chance to finish before filming this, so be sure to check out my Medium article maybe a week or 2 from now. It will be updated to reflect that I have finished those books, and my thoughts about those books will be there as well. This video is going to be mostly spoiler free, but if I am about to say any spoilers, I will put something here. Okay, let's get started. I'm just gonna be looking at the Medium article that I published while I'm talking through this video. Honestly, a lot of what I'm saying is coming from this article, but I wanted to kind of provide it in video and article format, so if you see me looking down at my phone, that's why. The first book that I read this year is Present Over Perfect by Shauna Niequist. Nyquist? I'm so sorry, I'm realizing just now that I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I actually did not read a physical version of this book. I listened to it on Libby. I promise this is not an ad, but ever since my friend Amanda told me about Libby, I have been telling everybody who likes books to check it out. Libby is a free app, and if you have a library card, which is also free, all you need to do is put in your library card info, and then you can read books and listen to audiobooks on the app for free. Anyway, my friend Amanda, who recommended Libby to me, also recommended this book to me, and I started it at the end of 2020 and ended up finishing it in 2021. It is so good, especially if you're a Christian, especially if you serve in ministry. It taught me so much about how to be present over perfect and how to live in the moment, how to say no's now so that you can say more yeses in the future, how to draw your own boundaries, just so many important things that I think I need for life, and I think everyone just kind of needs to know. I felt myself relating to every single chapter. Again, don't have much to say about it except I really like this book and I really want to read more of Shauna's other books. The second book that I read is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. I honestly wasn't really planning on listening to this book. I was scrolling through Libby's like recommended whatever, and it was a random find. I really liked that it was written by an Asian woman, and I was really trying to challenge myself this year to read more books by people of color. I just realized I'm talking with my hands so much. I really enjoyed this book, and it wasn't what I expected, and it still is quite different from a lot of other books that I've read. It's definitely what you would call a slice of life book, where the story kind of starts in a random place, like you're just jumping into the protagonist's lives. There are 4 protagonists. This is spoiler free, but the way that it ends is also sort of like, okay, now we're leaving the story, but the story is continuing after this. The ending was actually so unresolved and so just like, okay, now we're gonna leave, but the story's gonna continue, okay, bye, that I was really surprised to hear the audiobook say that it was ending, like there were special thanks and stuff, and I was like, what? It's over? The whole book is told from the perspectives of 4 different Korean women who are living in Seoul, and each chapter is narrated by one of the 4 characters. So it'll rotate between like A, B, C, D, and then it'll go back to A, B, C, D. I'm really sorry I don't actually remember all of their names. I listened to this book in like January or February, but it was really entertaining listening to the audiobook and hearing different voices for each character and just hearing the book come to life in that sense. So I definitely recommend the audiobook. It talks a lot about pressures, especially as a Korean woman, to look a certain way or to get married, and especially to get married to a certain man, and then what kind of kids you have to have. Just a lot about societal standards and pressures, and I feel like even though I don't live in Korea, I do feel some of those things as an Asian American woman. It is so beautifully written and relatable and funny and sad. I just really liked it. I'm going to talk about some more specific stuff now, so there are spoilers ahead. if you want to skip past this, you should go to this timestamp. I have written here, 2 of the saddest parts of the book for me had to do with Ara. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Ara in the book, she is actually mute, and so there's a lot of struggle that comes with that. One of the parts that made me super sad was when Ara was working in her beauty salon that she works at, and she was really trying to leave work early, I think to see a K-pop star or something, and her coworker Cherry, who despises Ara, was like sabotaging her, and then Ara was so upset and ended up not being able to go see her idol that night. It was just so infuriating and disheartening because Ara could not speak up for herself, and I just can't even imagine that pain. The second thing that made me really sad also had to do with Ara. It was about when she finally got to meet the K-pop idol that she was really obsessed with. Sorry, I don't remember if it's K-pop or K-drama, but a Korean idol. And then it was really underwhelming and disappointing, and it was like she had attached a lot of her hopes and dreams and aspirations to this idol, and all of it just like came crashing down. I can definitely relate to that because I have dealt with like escapism and being obsessed with celebrities and certain boy bands or whatever, just so that I could have more joy or hope or excitement in my life because I didn't like the life that I was living. There are a couple other things that I wrote in the article that I think are a little too specific just for me to talk about in this video. I don't want to kind of drone on and on about this one book, so definitely check out the article that I have, again, linked in the description of this video. The third book that I read this year is 1000 Gifts by Anne Voskamp. This was the first book that I read this year that was actually a physical hardcover book, and it was gifted to me last Christmas by my friend Amanda, who I've already mentioned a bunch of times in this video. This book took me a long time to finish just because I didn't really, again, have the capacity to sit down and read a lot of the time. And I feel like this year has honestly been sort of a dry season for me and my faith. I've definitely had ups and downs, and I would say it actually started in 2020 because we were all struggling. But the way that Anne writes is so beautiful, so poetic. Like, I really don't know another author that writes the way that she does. And this book would really meet me in different dry seasons throughout the past year. The way that Anne writes is just so compelling, and it's, again, beautiful. Like, I have no other words to describe it. It really makes you re-examine your relationship with like God the Father, like that particular aspect of God. It caused me to reflect on how I viewed him and my relationship to him, especially because Anne shares in this book that she has gone through so much. There's been death in her family and struggle, and one of her kids was injured in an accident, like so many things, and yet there were always things to be grateful for. I'm sorry, I should have said that the book is called 1000 Gifts because Anne had this challenge for herself to write 1000 things that she was grateful for. And she kept coming back to this Greek word, Eucharisto. I don't speak Greek, I'm really sorry. It means to be thankful, but the way that Anne kind of delves deeper into what she considers the word to mean is just very profound. And you can tell through the anecdotes that she shares in the book that she really is trying to make that the way that she lives her life, and not just something happens and then I'm grateful. It's, no, I'm already grateful, that is my posture, and everything is gonna flow from that, which I think is really beautiful. It's so good. The fourth book that I read this year is Lead from the Outside by Stacey Abrams. This was another one that I found on Libby and decided to listen to as an audiobook. I loved this. Honestly, I felt so encouraged every time I decided to start listening to this book, whether it was when I was walking the dogs or when I was doing the dishes or putting away laundry. Like, I just felt encouraged and empowered. I know that Stacey Abrams is technically like a political figure, but I personally think that you should listen to this no matter what your political background is, especially if you're a woman of color. Hello, Pancake. I just feel like you can tell that Stacey is such a genuine, passionate, kind human, and that just really makes me want to listen to everything that she has to say ever. I feel like through this book she gave really invaluable— Hey! Sorry, I saw Pancake jump up on the counter and try to get some food. There wasn't even any food there. Anyway, I feel like Stacey really gave a lot of invaluable advice in this book about how to be mentored and why that's really important, and then how important it is to mentor other people. Some might call that discipleship. She also talks about how to make sure your voice is heard in a room where maybe you're the minority. You wanna come in, Papa? Hello. I just think it was really good. Again, I felt incredibly empowered just listening to her narrate this book. And side note, I got to see Stacey speak live a few months ago, and it was honestly incredible. The fifth book that I read is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is a book that I know a lot of people have read because it's really new and it's very very well written. I borrowed this book from the library, sat down on this couch, and I read the entire thing in one morning, and I was sobbing the entire time. If you don't know, Crying in H Mart is about Michelle's experience living through her mom having cancer. I wrote here, I'm just gonna read it because I wrote it well and I don't know how else to rephrase it. Michelle captures so much about what it's like to lose someone you love but have a complicated relationship with. She also does a great job capturing the Asian American experience and what a typical Asian American child's relationship with their parents is generally like. I think for parents who are immigrants who have children that are American born, there tends to be some complexity in the relationship. There's cultural differences and already just generational differences, and there's stuff about culture wrapped up into it too, without saying too much. And I think that, again, Michelle just captures that really well. If you're a child of an immigrant, especially if you are an Asian American, I think you'll really relate to a lot of things in this book. Yeah, I can't recommend this book enough, but I will say, do not read it in a public place. Pancakes flipping pillows over. Unless you're okay with reading it and then inevitably like being surrounded by dirty Kleenex because you're crying so much. If you see stuff moving back here, it's pancake. The last book that I read this year is Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now I know Colleen Hoover has really kind of blown up in the past few years. I know that she has a TikTok presence. I know a lot of like young adult readers like reading her. This is the first and still only book that I've read by her. I know she usually does romance, but this was, I believe, her first like thriller suspense novel, and I really enjoyed it. What a whirlwind though. Like, this was one book that I could not put down. Like, whenever I put it down, I was reluctant to, like I had to go do something else and was thinking about it and thinking about when I could go back to reading this book. I was so engrossed in this story. Spoilers are going to be coming up ahead, but before that I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about what this book is about. So this book follows the protagonist, whose name is Loan. She is a mildly successful author, if you can even say that. Like, she just loves to write. It's not bringing in a lot of money. All of a sudden she gets contacted one day to essentially ghostwrite for this very well established, very rich, very successful author, Verity, who is extremely well known, but she was contracted to write a series, and halfway through her writing it, she gets in a terrible accident. I think my camera just moved because Pancake is sniffing the tripod. You don't really know the details of the accident until later on, but you follow Loan as she eventually moves into Verity's home and tries to gather information about her writing style and her books and what Verity would want the rest of her series to look like. Loan just like uncovers lots and lots and lots of secrets, and that's all I can say without spoiling anything. Now, spoilers ahead. If you want to skip this, you can go to this timestamp. So I was thinking to myself as I was reading this book, wow, there is a lot of sex. There's so much sex that I ended up just kind of skimming through a lot of it, but I also wanted to be careful because I didn't want to miss like important dialogue. If you are sensitive to that kind of stuff, please do not read this book. I was already like in this book and invested in the story, so I was just like flipping. Once you read the letter that comes up at the end, you sort of understand why there was so much of that. I love at the end when Verity goes, and this is completely paraphrasing it because I don't have the book anymore, but she's like, do you really think women think about sex that much? Like, she writes that in the letter, and I just think it's so funny because she's writing it to Jeremy, like her husband. It's just like, yeah, no, we don't. I'm just gonna keep that there, and we are moving on. If you have read the book, I need to know if you are team letter or team manuscript. I think that I'm team manuscript in that I just spent so much time with the manuscript like throughout this book that I feel like the letter was really thrown in out of left field. I didn't have a lot of time to process it or adjust to it because it came in like literally right at the very end. I spent so much of my time with this book like believing the manuscript and everything the manuscript was saying. It was just hard for me to believe that the letter was real. I didn't love that twist at the end, I will say. But I think it does kind of make sense because, again, like, I don't think Verity would have like written that much about like her and Jeremy's intimate times and have that really be like who she was like as a person. But I did find myself like panicking and like my heart stopped when Loan started reading the letter and realizing that, oh, maybe if we had just let Verity explain herself, we wouldn't have felt like we needed to kill her. The ending of someone's life is so severe and so permanent, and I just... big yikes. But the book was so entertaining and such a fun read that it's fine. Like, even if I didn't like the twist at the end, I'm ultimately okay with it. Because I did generally like the overall experience of reading this book. Okay, well, that is the end of my video. I, again, only read 6 books, so I didn't really get to talk about too much, but I am hoping to read so much more in 2022 now that I feel like I've fallen back in love with reading books again. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow me on my Instagram and my TikTok if you don't already, and stay tuned for my video next week about all the TV shows I watched in 2021. Bye!